There is something about the wilderness that makes us uncomfortable. It strips us of the illusions we carry, the titles we cling to, and the masks we wear for the world. The wilderness is not glamorous. It is dry. It is quiet. It is the place where no applause follows you and no crowd cheers for you. It is where you are faced with yourself, and it is in that confrontation that identity is born. When life leads us into the wilderness, our first instinct is to resist it. You think something must have gone wrong, that maybe God has forgotten us, or that we are somehow being punished. But the wilderness is not punishment. It is preparation. It is in the wilderness that you learn the sound of your own voice without the echo of others. It is in the wilderness that you learn what is really in your heart when the comfort is gone, when the resources are scarce, when the familiar is stripped away. The wilderness reveals what we have depended on and what we have defined ourselves by. If your identity was built on your success, the wilderness will strip success away until you discover who you are without it. If your identity was built on relationships, the wilderness may separate you until you learn who you are when no one validates you. If your identity was built on comfort, the wilderness will make you uncomfortable until you learn that your true identity was never tied to comfort. And though the wilderness feels like the place of loss, it is actually the place of discovery. It is the place where you realize that your name is not the label life gave you, not the narrative people imposed on you, and not the limitations you've accepted. It is the place where you hear the whisper that reminds you, you are chosen, you are called. You are not what happened to you, and you are not what left you. Identity is not born in the palace. It is born in the wilderness. Because in the palace, you can mistake applause for identity. But in the wilderness, when no one is clapping and no one is watching, you learn that your worth is not in the crowd's approval. You learn to anchor yourself in something unshakable, unmovable, eternal. The wilderness becomes a classroom. It teaches resilience. It teaches patience. It teaches trust. But more than that, it teaches you who you are. And when you leave that wilderness, you leave differently. You walk out not with the identity people gave you, but with the identity that was forged in the silence, refined in the struggle, and confirmed in the stillness. So if you find yourself in a wilderness season, don't despise it. Don't run from it, lean into it. Because the wilderness is not where you are lost. It's where you are found. It's not where your story ends. It's where your true story begins. And it is there, in the wilderness, that the identity you were always meant to walk in will finally be born. The wilderness strips away false identities built on applause, success, or relationships, revealing who you are at the core. When life removes the noise of recognition, the comfort of routine, and the stability of what you thought defined you, it forces you into a place where you can no longer hide behind the things that once gave you worth. The wilderness is not glamorous. It does not cater to your ego. It confronts you with the raw reality of yourself. Suddenly, the applause that once validated you is silent. The opportunities that once gave you a sense of purpose are gone. The relationships you leaned on may feel distant or even absent. In this place, you are not who you were told to be. You are not what you achieved, and you are not the image others applauded. In the wilderness, all that is stripped away, leaving you face to face with the question, who am I really? This process is uncomfortable because many of us have built our sense of identity on fragile foundations. Perhaps it was success that made you feel significant. You believed your value increased with every accomplishment, with every door that opened, with every time your name was celebrated. But when success is no longer visible, when progress feels halted, the wilderness reveals if you still know who you are without the applause. Perhaps it was relationships that gave you a sense of belonging. You found identity in being needed, loved, or validated by others. But when those relationships shift, when people no longer affirm you, when distance or silence replaces companionship, the wilderness asks you if you still know who you are without their validation. Perhaps it was comfort that gave you stability, As long as life was predictable, you felt secure. But when the wilderness removes your comfort, when the familiar patterns are gone, it reveals whether your identity was anchored in security or in something unshakable. The stripping away feels harsh, but it is necessary. Because false identities can only hold you for so long. They look stable on the surface, but the moment life shakes you, they collapse. And the wilderness does not allow you to keep living from illusions. It demands honesty. It demands that you confront yourself. You may feel exposed, but exposure is where truth begins. The wilderness becomes a refining fire, burning away what was never meant to define you. The applause was never meant to be your anchor. The achievements were never meant to be your essence. The relationships were never meant to be the foundation of your worth. These things are beautiful, but they are fragile. And fragile things cannot sustain the weight of your identity. The wilderness teaches you that applause may stop, but you are still significant. Success may pause, but you are still valuable. Relationships may shift, but you are still whole. Comfort may disappear, but you are still grounded. It is in this environment of loss that you discover the truest form of gain, the discovery of yourself apart from everything you thought you needed. The silence of the wilderness is not empty, it is full of revelation. When the world's noise quiets down, you finally hear the voice that has been whispering all along. The voice that calls you chosen, loved, and purposeful beyond what you can accomplish or who surrounds you. The wilderness strips away what you thought made you, not to leave you empty, but to reveal what cannot be stripped away. You are not what you lost. You are not the achievements that are no longer visible. You are not the applause that has gone quiet. You are not the relationships that shifted. You are not the comfort that disappeared. What remains after the wilderness has stripped everything away is your essence, your true identity. The part of you that cannot be taken, shaken, or diminished. What feels like isolation in the wilderness is actually the environment for divine revelation and inner discovery. At first glance, the wilderness feels like abandonment. As you look around and there is no one to lean on, no one to validate, no one to confirm what you are feeling. It feels like silence, like emptiness, like the world has moved forward and you have been left behind. But the wilderness is not an accident. It is intentional. It removes distractions so that you can finally discern what has always been speaking to you, but was drowned out by the noise of people, opportunities, and the constant pull of life's demands. What you interpret as isolation is actually the space you need to hear clearly. It is not punishment, it is positioning. The wilderness places you in a posture where you are no longer sustained by the echo of others, but by the voice that speaks directly to your soul. In the wilderness, revelation comes in silence. It is in the absence of activity that clarity begins to form. When there are no schedules filled with endless tasks, when there is no applause to chase, when there are no people constantly pulling you in different directions, you begin to recognize patterns you never noticed before. You begin to notice your own inner voice, the one that reveals the longings, fears, and desires that were buried under busyness. The wilderness is where your heart is exposed, and when your heart is exposed, it becomes fertile ground for transformation. In the stillness, you realize that what you thought was emptiness is actually a sacred space designed for encounters that could not happen in the noise of the crowd. Isolation also forces you to confront the illusions you've carried. When you are surrounded by people, it is easy to hide behind roles, masks, and personas. You can be applauded for your gifting while hiding your wounds. You can be affirmed for your strength while suppressing your weaknesses. But in the wilderness, there is no stage to perform on, no role to play, no image to maintain. And though that can feel painful, it is in that stripping away that you encounter truth. The truth of who you really are, the truth of what you have avoided, the truth of what has been shaping your life from the shadows. The wilderness removes the covering so that revelation can pierce through. In that revelation, discovery begins. You discover strengths you didn't know you had because they were never tested before. never tested before. You discover resilience you didn't think you carried until silence pressed against you. You discover a depth of faith you didn't know was possible, because faith only matures in places where certainty is absent. You discover how much of your identity was attached to temporary things, and you begin to see yourself apart from those attachments. Discovery is not always comfortable, but it is necessary. Because what you discover in the wilderness becomes the foundation for the person you will be when you step out of it. The wilderness also shifts your vision. In the crowd, you often see life through the lens of others, what they expect of you, how they perceive you, what they demand from you. In the wilderness, that lens is removed. Suddenly, you are not looking outward for definition, you are looking inward. And in that inward gaze, a new clarity emerges. You realize what matters and what doesn't. You recognize what was distraction and what was purpose. You learn to discern the difference between noise and guidance. This shift in vision changes how you walk, how you think, and how you live when you leave the wilderness. The wilderness is also where intimacy deepens. When everything else is stripped away, you are left with the one presence that never leaves. And in that intimacy, you learn to rely not on the tangible, but on the eternal. You discover a source of strength that is not tied to what you can see. You realize that even in isolation, you are not alone. And in that revelation, identity is shaped. You are no longer defined by the presence or absence of people. You are no longer defined by who affirms or ignores you. You are defined by the encounter you have in the wilderness, the encounter that affirms who you are regardless of what surrounds you. The wilderness may feel like isolation, but it is in that isolation that the deepest discoveries are made. It is in the stillness that you hear what you could not hear before. It is in the absence of distractions that revelation flows. And it is in the solitude of that season that you discover not only who you are, but whose you are. The wilderness is not punishment, but preparation, refining resilience, patience, and trust. When you find yourself in a season that feels barren, where doors are closed, where progress seems stalled, and where comfort is absent, it is easy to believe you are being punished. It is easy to assume that something went wrong, that somehow you failed, or that you are being forgotten. But the wilderness is not evidence of rejection. It is evidence of intentional preparation. Preparation requires refinement, and refinement can only happen in an environment that removes ease. It is in the wilderness that what is weak is strengthened, what is impatient is stretched, and what is fragile is made durable. Without preparation, purpose cannot be sustained, and the wilderness is the stage where that preparation takes place. Resilience is forged in the wilderness because resilience cannot grow in comfort. When everything is accessible, when every need is met without struggle, when there is no resistance, the muscles of perseverance never develop. But in the wilderness, when resources are scarce, when answers are delayed, when paths seem unclear, you learn to endure. You learn to press forward even when you do not feel progress. You learn that strength is not the absence of struggle, but the ability to keep moving through struggle. Each moment you choose not to quit, each time you rise again after being knocked down, each decision to keep believing when nothing looks certain. Resilience is being built, and that resilience becomes the foundation on which your identity stands. Because when you know you can endure wilderness, you know you can endure anything. Patience is also refined in the wilderness. Patience is not simply the act of waiting, but the posture you hold while you wait. In seasons of wilderness, there is often no clear timeline. You do not know when the waiting will end, and that lack of certainty can stir frustration. But in that frustration lies the opportunity to grow in patience. Patience teaches you to surrender control, to release the obsession with timing, and to embrace trust in the process. In the wilderness, you cannot rush what is unfolding. You cannot force the door to open before it is ready. You cannot accelerate the process without missing what it was meant to teach you. And so patience is formed not as passive idleness, but as active trust. Patience that says, I may not see it yet, but I believe something is forming. Patience that refuses to give up because the promise has not yet appeared. Patience that strengthens character because character is not built in moments of ease, but in the persistence of waiting without bitterness. Trust becomes the cornerstone of wilderness preparation. Trust is easy to declare when everything is secure, but true trust is proven when security is gone. In the wilderness, you cannot lean on your own ability because your ability feels limited. You cannot lean on your own plans because your plans no longer hold certainty. You cannot lean on the affirmation of others because they are not always present. Trust is built when you are forced to lean on something greater than yourself. Trust is what holds you when logic fails, when resources run dry, and when answers are delayed. It is in the wilderness that you discover that trust is not built on circumstances, but on conviction. Conviction that there is purpose in the process, Conviction that preparation is necessary for elevation. Conviction that what feels like lack is actually shaping abundance in you. The wilderness also refines the way you see yourself. Punishment speaks to shame, but preparation speaks to purpose. If you view the wilderness as punishment, you will despise it, you will resist it, and you will miss its lessons. But when you understand it as preparation, your perspective shifts. You realize that every delay is sharpening you, every silence is teaching you, every struggle is shaping you. You realize that this season is not wasted, but woven into your destiny. Preparation changes how you carry yourself in the wilderness. Instead of despair, you carry expectancy. Instead of bitterness, you carry gratitude. Instead of quitting, you lean into growth. The wilderness is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to develop you. The refining is uncomfortable because it confronts impatience, weakness, and fear. But it is only through that refining that you emerge ready to carry what has been assigned to you. Without wilderness preparation, you would step into purpose unprepared, fragile, and easily broken. But with it, you step into destiny resilient, patient, and anchored in trust. The wilderness shapes you not for where you are, but for where you are going. You realize that this season is not wasted, but woven into your destiny. Preparation changes how you carry yourself in the wilderness. Instead of despair, you carry expectancy. Instead of bitterness, you carry gratitude. Instead of quitting, you lean into growth. The wilderness is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to develop you. The refining is uncomfortable because it confronts impatience, weakness, and fear. But it is only through that refining that you emerge ready to carry what has been assigned to you. Without wilderness preparation, you would step into purpose unprepared, fragile, easily broken. But with it, you step into destiny resilient, patient, and anchored in trust. The wilderness shapes you not for where you are, but for where you are going. Identity is not forged in comfort, but in the tension of struggle, silence, and stillness. When life is easy, when everything flows smoothly, when no challenge stretches you, there is little demand placed on the depth of who you are. Comfort can create an illusion of identity, making you believe you know yourself simply because circumstances have never pressed against you. But the truth of identity is not revealed when you are at ease. It is revealed when life applies pressure. Struggle, silence, and stillness expose what lies beneath the surface. They strip away what is shallow and draw out what is eternal. Struggle has a way of forcing you to confront your limits. It reveals what you lean on, what you believe, and what you have anchored your worth in. In times of struggle, the roles you play and the masks you wear are tested. The identity that was built on achievements to shake when achievements no longer flow. The identity tied to titles and recognition begins to crumble when the applause fades. The identity rooted in relationships feels fragile when people no longer affirm you. The struggle confronts those false anchors and forces you to ask deeper questions. Who am I without all of this? What remains when everything else falls away? It is in wrestling with those questions that the foundation of true identity begins to take form. Silence also plays its role in shaping identity. In a world full of constant noise, silence can feel threatening. It removes the voices that once gave direction, the validation that once kept you secure, and the distractions that once kept you from facing yourself. Silence forces you inward. It compels you to listen not to the loud demands of others, but to the quiet truth that has been waiting to emerge. Silence reveals the parts of you that have been ignored, the wounds that have been avoided, and the dreams that have been buried. In silence, you realize that your identity cannot be found in the opinions of people, but in the truth that speaks when every other voice is hushed. Silence teaches you to separate what is essential from what is temporary, and in doing so, it brings clarity to who you really are. Stillness refines identity in yet another way. Stillness is not the absence of movement, but the refusal to strive. It is the surrender of control, the letting go of the need to constantly perform, prove, or produce in order to feel worthy. In stillness, you are no longer defined by what you can do. You are confronted with who you are when doing ceases. Stillness asks, if you never achieved another accomplishment, would you still believe you are valuable? If no one ever applauded you again, would you still know you are significant? If no one ever affirmed you, would you still believe you are enough? These questions cut deep, but they shape identity in a way that comfort never could. Stillness trains you to recognize that worth is not in striving, but in being. It is not in doing more, but in knowing who you are even when you do nothing. The tension of struggle, silence, and stillness works together to shape identity like fire shapes gold. Each element strips away illusions, burns away impurities, and reveals something purer, stronger, and truer. Struggle tests resilience. Silence uncovers truth. Stillness anchors worth. Together they form an identity that cannot be shaken by applause, taken by loss, or diminished by silence. Comfort may have given you ease, but struggle, silence, and stillness give you depth. Comfort may have provided you stability, but it never forced you to confront the essence of who you are. Tension does what comfort cannot. It pulls you, stretches you, and ultimately defines you. Identity forged in comfort is fragile because it has never been tested. It shatters the moment life disrupts the ease it was built on. But identity forged in struggle is resilient. Identity forged in silence is rooted. Identity forged in stillness is unshakable. These are the qualities that prepare you not just to know who you are, but to carry that identity through every season of life. The wilderness becomes the proving ground where this tension shapes you, not into who people think you should be, but into who you were always meant to be. Leaving the wilderness, you emerge not with the labels of people, but with the identity confirmed by God. The season of wilderness is not permanent, though at times it feels unending. It can stretch on in silence. It can feel like it has no conclusion, and it can make you wonder if you will ever see the other side. But the wilderness has a purpose, and purpose always comes with timing. When its work in you is complete, you do not walk out the same way you walked in. You enter that season carrying weight you thought defined you. Weight of expectation, weight of opinions, weight of performance, weight of identity handed to you by people and circumstances. But in the wilderness, those things fall away piece by piece. And as they fall away, something greater begins to emerge. When you step out, you are no longer bound by the labels that once held power over you. The label of failure no longer clings because you discovered resilience in silence. The label of unworthy no longer dictates your actions because you found worth apart from applause. The label of broken no longer defines your future because you realize that brokenness was the soil where strength was born. The wilderness teaches you that labels given by people are temporary, but identity revealed by God is eternal. People may call you one thing today and another thing tomorrow. Circumstances may brand you with limitation or rejection, but when God confirms who you are, it cannot be altered. The wilderness does more than remove false labels. It gives you vision for who you truly are. It takes the fragments of your journey and shows you how they connect. It reveals that the struggle was not wasted, The silence was not pointless. The stillness was not empty. It shows you that the very things you resented about the wilderness were the tools used to shape your character, your faith, and your perspective. And now, as you walk out of it, you carry not just survival, but wisdom. You carry not just endurance, but clarity. You carry not just lessons, but identities. Emerging from the wilderness means stepping into a new rhythm. You no longer move from insecurity, but from confidence. You no longer live to please the crowd, but to walk in purpose. You no longer chase affirmation because you know affirmation cannot add or subtract from who you already are. Your steps become intentional because you know your worth is not tied to how fast you move or how much you produce. Your words carry power because they come from a place of authenticity rather than a place of performance. Your presence carries weight because it is no longer diluted by pretense or fear. The wilderness also teaches you to value seasons. You understand that not every silent season is punishment and not every quiet place is abandonment. You now recognize that some of the most profound work happens in hiddenness. So instead of despising the hidden seasons to come, you embrace them, knowing they are forming something in you once again. You see the rhythm of life not as constant progress, but as waves of revelation, refinement, and release. You become unshaken by delay because you know the wilderness once delayed you to prepare you. You become unbothered by solitude because you remember solitude was where you first discovered truth. You become unafraid of struggle because struggle was where resilience first revealed itself. When you leave the wilderness, you leave with an identity that is not fragile, not shifting, not dependent on people or circumstances. It is confirmed in you, unshakable and sure. And that identity becomes the compass that guides you through every future season. It becomes the strength that carries you when storms arise. It becomes the anchor that holds you when people misunderstand you. It becomes the truth that silences the lies of the enemy. The wilderness does not just prepare you for one moment, it equips you for a lifetime. So when you find yourself stepping out of the wilderness, do not look back with resentment. Look back with gratitude. Because though it was painful, though it was lonely, though it tested you beyond what you thought you could handle, it gave you something priceless, identity. And that identity will carry you further than any title, any applause, or any recognition ever could. The wilderness gave you the gift of yourself, the truest version of who you are. And with that truth alive within you, no label, no season to come can ever take it away. You emerge whole, you emerge sure, and you emerge ready to walk boldly in the fullness of who you were always meant to be.